What if the only person who could make you feel alive again wasn't even human? In the middle of Mars' silent red deserts, one man's self-imposed exile is shattered by a mysterious being who crash lands into his world and into his heart. What starts as a rescue mission soon becomes a fight for connection, truth, and survival against impossible odds. Their bond defies worlds, their love rewrites everything. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more inspiring stories, and show your support with a thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's jump into the story. The wind moved like a soft breath over the Martian dust, carrying with it the whisper of something ancient and lonely. The fine red soil slipped through cracks in every structure, painting everything it touched with a rusty haze. Inside a small outpost carved out of metal and stubbornness, Rowan Hawley sat alone, watching the horizon through a narrow window. The cabin creaked gently, held together by bolts, pressure seals, and the silence of a man who had long since stopped expecting company. Rowan wasn't here by accident. He had left Earth 3 years ago, not because he had to, but because he couldn't breathe there anymore. The world had grown too loud, too crowded, too full of memories he couldn't live with. Mars, cold and empty, offered peace. Here, he could fix machines, monitor soil readings, and speak only when the systems required voice commands. It suited him, or at least it used to. That evening he hadn't touched his food. A reheated pouch of stew sat untouched on the tray beside him as he stared blankly out the window. The usual soft humming of the air filtration system was the only sound, until it wasn't. The sudden ping of an alert made him flinch. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the stillness like a shout. He turned to the console, expecting a system fault or weather anomaly. Instead, it was a distress signal, one he'd never seen before. He frowned. The beacon was steady, rhythmic, almost intentional. The signal wasn't automated. Someone or something was sending it. Grabbing his helmet and gloves, Rowan suited up without thinking twice. Outside, the Martian night was already creeping in, painting the ground in long shadows. The temperature was dropping fast, the wind biting even through his insulated suit. He followed the signal, the soft crunch of his boots, the only sound in the quiet world. It didn't take long to find her. She was crouched against a sharp rock formation, her body hunched, arms wrapped tightly around herself. At first, Rowan thought it was some kind of illusion or reflection or a broken drone. But then she moved. Her skin shimmered in the low light, changing shades as if responding to the atmosphere. She wasn't human. Not by any measure he knew. Rowan stopped a few feet away. His breath caught in his throat. He didn't move any closer. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice muffled by the helmet, but clear enough through the suit's comm system. Figure flinched. Then, slowly she turned her head, revealing a face that was both strange and beautiful. Large eyes, deep violet and unblinking, met his. She stood up slowly, her movements cautious. Her frame was thin and tall, her presence fragile, like she might vanish if the wind blew too hard. "Please," she said, barely louder than a whisper. "I need help." Rowan's training told him to report this. His instinct said otherwise. This creature, whatever she was, didn't look like a threat. She looked lost. He took a small step forward and held out a hand. "Come with me," he said. "You shouldn't be out here." She hesitated. Her eyes darted between him and the far-off dunes, as if debating something deeper than fear. Finally, she took his hand. Her touch was cool and smooth, like glass warmed by moonlight. They walked together back to the outpost, her steps light and almost floating. Once inside, the airlock hissed behind them, sealing the outside away. Rowan removed his helmet and glanced at her. She stood awkwardly in the middle of the cabin, holding a torn piece of cloth close to her chest. She didn't seem to know what to do next. He fetched a blanket and offered it to her. She flinched again, but accepted it after a moment, wrapping it tightly around herself. Her eyes stayed on him, watchful and unsure. "Do you have a name?" he asked gently. She nodded then. Whispered, "Nyari." "Nyari," he repeated softly. "I'm Rowan. You're safe here." She gave a small nod, her shoulders lowering just a little. He could see the exhaustion in the way she moved, like every breath cost her something. He didn't push for answers. Instead, he set a warm drink on the table and stepped back as she sat down. He noticed the way her skin shifted color slightly, a subtle reaction to the warmth around her. She watched him with those wide, searching eyes, as if trying to figure out what kind of creature he was. Rowan sat across from her and offered a small smile. "You're not from here," he said, not as a question. Nyari looked away. "Far," she replied. That was all she said, and for now it was enough. Rowan didn't need the full story. He knew what it was like to run from a place, to look for something quieter, safer. He understood that kind of silence, that night, as Mars turned slowly under a sky full of stars. Two strangers sat in a small metal cabin built to survive storms. One was human, the other not. But for the first time in a long while, neither of them felt truly alone. Asterisk in the days that followed. Rowan noticed how quiet Nyari could be, not the kind of silence that made you uncomfortable, but the kind that made you listen. She moved like someone trying not to disturb the air around her. She rarely spoke, and when she did, her voice was soft, like a song carried on wind. But her eyes were always watching, absorbing every detail. She was learning, even when she said nothing at all. Rowan didn't push her. He gave her time, space, and small comforts. He fixed her a proper bed, not just the cot in the corner. He offered her warm food, even if she only nibbled at it at first. He explained how the outpost worked. In slow, clear steps. She followed everything he said with the focus of someone clinging to knowledge like a lifeline. One morning, she surprised him by offering to help with daily routines. "I want to understand," she said, her words careful and honest. Rowan showed her how to check the oxygen filters, monitor the solar panels, and prepare meals. Her long, slender fingers were quick and steady, her mind sharp. But it wasn't just the tasks she wanted. She was trying to understand him, the way he worked, the way he moved, the way he lived. They didn't talk about why she was there. Rowan knew she had come from far away, maybe not just in distance. Some kind of pain hid behind her quiet eyes. He recognized it. He'd seen it in his own reflection before, in long nights with nothing but silence and regret for company. He didn't need the full story to understand that she'd lost something or someone, and that she was still carrying that weight. Still, something between them was beginning to shift. It started with small things. When she handed him tools, her hand brushed his. When they sat across from each other during meals, their eyes met just a moment longer than necessary. When she laughed an unexpectedly bright sound, it startled him in the best way. Like sunlight breaking through clouds. One night as they sat watching the pale sky darken, she asked a question. "Why do humans need to talk so much?" Rowan chuckled. "We don't all. Some of us get by with very little." Nyari tilted her head. "You talk more now than when I arrived." "That's because you listen," he said with a faint smile. "And you don't expect me to be someone I'm not." She seemed to think about that for a long moment. Then she said, "Where I come from, speaking is not the way we connect. We share through thoughts, through energy. But it's cold. Empty. I didn't know how quiet it was until I heard you speak." Rowan didn't know what to say. There was nothing poetic in his words, nothing polished. And yet, to her, even his quiet muttering as he fixed the water pump seemed to mean something. Later, that night, she approached him with a strange seriousness. She stood near the edge of the kitchen, her arms crossed, fingers twitching with nervous energy. "Rowan," she said softly. He looked up from where he was packing away tools. "Yeah, I've been thinking about humans." About the way you feel things. About love. He paused, setting down a wrench. What about it? I want to try it. Rowan blinked. Try, love? She nodded slowly, not meeting his eyes. Not because I fully understand it, but because I feel different when I'm with you. Not weak, just open. Rowan's chest tightened. Nyari, that's a big step. Are you sure this is what you want? I don't know what it will mean, she admitted. But I know I don't want to go back to feeling nothing. He stepped closer, careful not to move too fast. We can. Take it slow. You don't have to decide everything now. Her eyes met his, and in them, he saw a mix of fear and trust that hit deeper than any words ever could. I don't want to miss this, she whispered. Then don't, he said. From that moment, something new grew between them, not fast, not wild, but steady. They sat closer now, sometimes shoulder to shoulder on the small couch, watching the Martian winds blow patterns across the dunes. She asked him about Earth, about sunsets and oceans and music. He told her about his family, the ones he rarely talked to anymore, about a brother he missed, about the way he used to stare at the stars and dream of something more. In return, Neri offered pieces of her world, floating cities made of crystal and air, silent gatherings where emotion was forbidden, and memories she hadn't shared with anyone before. She spoke slowly, carefully, like someone learning how to use a voice for the first time. One evening, she reached for his hand and didn't let go. They sat like that for a long while, fingers intertwined, saying nothing. And yet, everything was being said in that silence. In the outpost built for one, two souls had started to learn how to breathe again, not just through oxygen, but through presence, through trust, through quiet moments that spoke louder than any storm. The quiet rhythm of life between Rowan and Nairi settled into something soft and comforting. Days moved slowly on Mars, but their time together felt full. There was no rush, no pressure. Every small gesture, every shared look carried meaning. They worked side by side, repairing systems, tending to the daily routines of survival, and talking late into the evening. Rowan had never believed peace could feel like this, like sitting close without needing to speak, like watching the red horizon glow under the weight of two steady hearts. Nari was changing too. Her eyes sparkled more often, her laughter came easier. She began teasing Rowan in her quiet way, asking endless questions about things he'd never thought were interesting before, like why humans celebrated birthdays or why Earth sunsets made people cry. In return, she told him more about her world, about the way her people had always feared emotion, how connection was seen as weakness. Her exile had been swift and cold. She hadn't even been allowed to say goodbye. Still, she smiled more now. There was something healing in this strange life they were building together. But even in their happiness, the world outside did not forget them. The message came suddenly, flashing across the outpost communication screen. As Rowan was finishing up a simple system calibration, it was short, direct, and heavy. Martian orbital. Patrol had detected an unidentified energy pattern in his sector. They were sending a team to investigate. 48 hours. Rowan stood frozen, reading the words again and again. A chill slid down his spine, even though the temperature was steady. He turned to look at Nyari, who had just entered the room carrying a folded blanket. When she saw his face, her smile faded. What is it? He showed her the message. Her fingers trembled as she read it. They found my ship. Or the trace of it. Rowan nodded. They'll be here soon. We don't have much time. Nori sank into the chair, her expression unreadable. They'll take me, she said quietly. Even if I run, they'll track the energy from the ship. I shouldn't have stayed. No, Rowan said sharply, then softened his voice. No, this isn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. We can hide you. We can make them believe there's nothing here. She looked up, eyes wide. Rowan, they're not like you. They don't trust easily. If they find out what you've done, what you've hidden, then I'll face the consequences, he said simply. But I won't let them take you. That night, sleep didn't come. Rowan began working through every detail of the outpost where Nyari's ship had crashed. How to cover it, what systems might give her away. He created a plan. Bury the wreckage deep beneath the soil and reroute the scanner signals to create interference. It was risky, but it might be enough to mask her presence. Nyari helped, though her hands shook. She barely spoke, focused instead on moving parts and sealing gaps. As they worked, Rowan noticed her pausing to look at him, her eyes full of something heavy. "You don't have to do this," she said as they dug through the cold dirt. "I don't want to be the reason your life is destroyed." He stopped. "Digging, Nyari, listen. Before you came here, I wasn't living. I was just existing. You reminded me what it means to care again. To feel something real. That's not something I can walk away from." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. Instead, she took his hand. "You've shown me a kind of strength I was taught to. Fear, I thought emotion made you weak. But it doesn't. It makes you brave." The next day passed in a blur. They barely ate. Every movement had purpose. They sealed the last of the ship's remains beneath layers of Martian dust, then adjusted the outpost systems to scramble nearby readings. Rowan recalibrated the communications panel to give false feedback if scanned. As the sun began to set, casting the sky in deep red and orange streaks, they stood outside, watching the horizon. "They'll be here soon," Nyari said, her voice steady now. "I want to say something before they come." Rowan turned to her, heart pounding. "I'm not afraid anymore," she said. "I used to think love was a thing I'd never understand. But I do now. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, like standing next to someone while the world feels like it might fall apart." He stepped closer, his voice soft. "What are you saying, Nyari?" She smiled, reaching up to touch his cheek. "I want this, us, no matter what happens next." The patrol ship appeared on the horizon, a silver glint in the fading light. It grew larger, closer, until the rumble of engines filled the air. Rowan and Nyari didn't move. They just stood there, side by side, hands clasped, hearts steady. They had built something between two worlds, something fragile, yes, but real. And as the dust kicked up by the approaching ship began to swirl around them, Rowan whispered, "Whatever happens next, we face it together." Nyari nodded. "Together." The patrol ship landed with a low hum that vibrated through the ground and rattled the walls of Rowan's outpost. The sun had already dipped below the Martian cliffs, casting long, uneasy shadows across the red dust. Inside, Nyari waited in silence, hidden in a compartment Rowan had built beneath the floor, a space shielded against scanners and built from materials he'd collected over years. Her heart pounded. Every breath felt too loud. Above her, footsteps moved across the floor, voices sharp and unfamiliar. Rowan stood at the entrance, calm on the outside, but tense beneath his skin. 3 officers stepped off the patrol ship, dressed in crisp uniforms and carrying portable scanners. The leader, a tall woman with tired eyes, didn't waste time. "We've picked up irregular energy signals. They came from this sector," she said without emotion. Rowan nodded slowly. "I saw the alert. Been dealing with tech issues, interference from a dust storm, maybe. Happens more than you'd think out here." The officers followed him into the outpost. They looked at everything, every screen, every system, every loose bolt. One checked the comms console and raised an eyebrow. "These readings are odd." Rowan leaned against the wall casually. "Old equipment. Nothing ever runs clean this far from the main grid. I keep logs if you'd like to see." The officer nodded, but her expression stayed hard. They ran scans across the floor. Nyari held her breath. The scanner paused for a second, let out a soft beep, and moved on. Rowan forced himself to keep his face blank. The shielding was holding Dot after what felt like hours. The team finally stepped outside again. The leader looked back one last time. "We'll be reporting this. It's not enough for action, but it's unusual." Rowan gave a slow nod. Mars is full of surprises. With that, they returned to their ship and lifted off the engines, stirring the dust into a fiery whirlwind. Rowan watched until they disappeared into the dark sky, then exhaled slowly. His legs felt weak. When he opened the panel in the floor, Nari climbed out and immediately wrapped her arms around him. He held her tightly, neither of them speaking. The silence between them now wasn't fear. It was relief, gratitude. That night they sat by the window, watching the stars reappear. "They'll be back," Nuri said quietly. "Or someone else will come eventually." "I know," Rowan replied, "but we'll be ready." The weeks that followed were full of quiet work. They made the outpost stronger, sealed cracks, improved the energy dampeners, and moved supplies to hidden storage. Rowan even rewrote old system codes to give off false readings. It wasn't perfect, but it was safe enough. Nyari began leaving the hidden compartment behind. She moved freely again, smiling more, laughing at Rowan's dry humor, asking strange questions that always made him think. Their bond deepened, not with big declarations, but with shared moments. Rowan would find her watching the stars with a soft look in her eyes. She'd sit next to him during breakfast, not saying much but resting her hand lightly over his. They learned how to exist together, not just as two people in the same space, but as something closer, something whole. One afternoon, as they repaired the outer wall together, Nyari glanced up at him. "Do you ever wonder if all of this means something more?" Rowan wiped sweat from his brow and looked at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean, us, here, this connection. Me breaking everything I was raised to believe, and you risking everything to protect me. Maybe this isn't just survival. Maybe it's a beginning." Rowan thought about that, about how far they'd come, about how he'd gone from running away from life to finding it again in the most unexpected place. He reached for her hand and gave a small nod. Maybe it's the beginning of something better. That night, they received a message. It wasn't from Earth, and it didn't come through normal channels. It was short, flickering across Rowan's console in an unfamiliar script. Nari stared at it for a long time before translating aloud. "You were right to feel. The silence is breaking," Rowan frowned. "Is that from your people?" She nodded slowly, her eyes wide. "Someone's listening. Someone on the other side heard what happened. And they're starting to question." He didn't fully understand it, but he saw what it meant to her. A quiet revolution. Not with weapons or war, but with hearts slowly learning how to open. Nari reached for his hand and smiled, tears shimmering in her eyes. Maybe this wasn't just about us after all. They stayed up late, talking about what could come next, not just for them, but for two worlds that had always felt too far apart. They didn't make big plans. Mars had taught them that life rarely followed a map, but they believed now in each other, in the idea that connection was stronger than fear. As the red dust settled outside and the stars shone brighter above the planet's surface, Rowan and Nyari sat in their little outpost, not as a secret and a soldier, not as an alien and a man, but as two souls who had found something worth holding on to. Something real, something brave. And it had all begun with a whisper on the wind.